Last time out, it was a triple bill as the GP2 guys were at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, where Turavi Nalterion, in only his second race, took his first ever win, whilst a huge crash happened on the slowing down lap involving Paolino Tomaselli and Alessandro Della Valle. In Formula E, the first ever pre-season test took place at Donington Park, and it was Wilson Brown who was the quickest overall, while Davy Suarez showed some good pace in the dry and wet conditions, whilst the DTM fraternity was at the same place as GP2, specifically Barcelona, and it was Evan Byrne on the same track he took his last top class win, who came through to take his first ever DTM win. Now the DTM fraternity arrives at the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Austria, where the weather could have a part to play. Can Evan Byrne make it 2 in a row? Can Ethan Sermon increase his lead at the top? And how will the Formula E guys get on in their first ever race at the Adelaide Prix? Find out in this week's edition of the Feeder Series Roundup. Hello and welcome to this week's show. Today we'll be having a look at two events. Round 5 of the GP4 DTM Offline Championship taking place around the Styrian region of Austria, specifically at the Red Bull Ring, and we will be having a look at Round 1 of the GP4 Formula E Offline Championship at the Adelaide Street Circuit in Australia. So let's kick things off with the first ever Formula E race. In testing, it produced some very interesting results, with both days having the whole pack just separated by 0.6 of a second, with Wilson Brown and Davy Suarez showing some good pace. But can they keep that up into Round 1? Well, let's find out, shall we? So to take us through the action of the Adelaide Prix, here is our Formula E narrator, El Warrior.
The first ever round of the GP4 Formula E Offline Championship kicked off in the famous Adelaide Street Circuit in Australia for the running of the Adelaide Prix. After 30 minutes of qualifying, Felix Krebs for Viper Racing took the honor of being the first ever pole sitter in Formula E, with Leon Cerner in second and Patrick Juhas making amends for his pre-season slump to round out the top 3. The race started and Leon Cerner made a fantastic start, getting the jump on Felix Krebs to take the lead into turn 1, with everybody else able to avoid contact. Down to the hairpin for the first time, and Arlo Jones made a move on Patrick Juhas to take 5th, whilst Monroe took 9th from Lopez. At the end of lap 1, Cerner led from Krebs 2nd, Chatfield 3rd, Jones 4th, Juhas 5th, Duncan 6th, Wolf 7th, Willows 8th, Monroe 9th, and Lopez rounding out the top 10. Arlo Jones had more pace than Chris Chatfield and made an incredible move around the outside of the hairpin to move up to 3rd. Marcus Stilla was making his way up to the field and moved up to 13th at the expense of Max Gillen. 2 laps later, Noah Schlegel made a move on Pedro Lopez to move up to the final points place. However, Lopez would retake the place on the next lap at the same corner. Contact at turn 4 as Alessandro Tomaselli went a tad bit deep and clipped the back of Max Gillen going into a slide. Thankfully, the pair didn't sustain any damage. Lap 12 and Noah Schlegel was again on Pedro Lopez and took the place off him to move back into 10th position after a lockup from Lopez. On the same lap, the first retirement in Formula E history would go to the China Racing of Laura Chung, thanks to a blown-up powertrain, not the way Laura wanted to start her first GP4 fraternity race. Fellow Asian driver Nguyen Huang Minh was on the move as he moved up to 12th place at the expense of former GP2 driver Tobias Kress. The mandatory pit stops got underway on lap 15, with the second place man Felix Krebs being one of the few drivers to pit on that lap, along with the likes of Marcus Stillo, David Suarez, and Sam Thompson. A lap later, and Arlo Jones made his mandatory pit stop from Mahindra Racing and made a very good stop as he was able to leapfrog Felix Krebs, who he was battling before the pit stops. He was also joined by James Willows, who was in a battle of his own. Adam Wolf finished his pit stop as Wilson Brown for China Racing and Ralph Urgensi for Amelie and Guri pitted at the same time. Nguyen Huang Minh's race would come to a sudden end at the exit of turn 4 thanks to a gearbox problem, becoming the second retirement of the day. On the same lap, race leader Leon Cerner pitted for his mandatory pit stop, and due to the lead he built up since the start, he was able to come out still at the front pack. He was also trained on that lap by Noé Schlegel, Pedro Lopez and Tobias Kress. Patrick Juhas was still yet to stop, but that didn't stop him from putting a move on Leon Cerner to briefly take the lead of the race. Chris Chatfield had jumped Jones and Krebs in the pits, but was now under threat from Arlo Jones Mahindra, and Arlo was able to overtake him at the hairpin for a provisional second place. After leading briefly, Patrick Juhas made his mandatory pit stop, while it was clear that he left his strategy way too late, as he lost places in the pits to the likes of Duncan and Willows, while Monroe jumped him in the pit lane. To make matters worse, he lost 8th to Wolf at the hairpin a bit later. Still looked to the inside of Lopez at turn 4 and got handed the place on a silver platter when Lopez went deep and smacked it into the wall, causing him to retire from the race. James Willows had been stuck behind William Duncan for quite a while, but eventually passed him for 6th at the hairpin. A lap later and Patrick Juhas would lose another place, this time to the ambling agree of Noé Schlegel for 9th. A little bit later and William Duncan would get back at James Willows into the same corner where James passed him earlier to move back into 6th place. Daniel Fasseur looked for a way through on Tobias Kress at turn 4, but just like with Pedro Lopez, Tobias would run too deep and clear the outside wall, losing a wheel. However, he would be classified as he did 90% of the race distance. Chris Chatfield and Arlo Jones would throw away their podiums with 3 laps to go, as they both crashed at turn 4, handing the places to the battling Felix Krebs and Angus Monroe. After an amazing 32 laps, Virgin Racing's Leon Cerner came through to become the first ever Formula E winner after a dominant drive for the German. Fellow compatriot Felix Krebs finished 2nd, just in front of Angus Monroe, who battled him to the finish. William Duncan finished 4th, with James Willows 5th, Alan Wolf 6th, Noé Schlegel 7th, Patrick Juhas 8th, Marcus Tillell and Noah Fulgenzi completed the points. Arlo Jones, Chris Chatfield and Tobias Kress were classified as they completed 90% of the race distance, meaning the only classified retirements were Pedro Lopez, Nguyen Huang Ming and Laura Chung. The Drivers' Championship is similar to the race results, with Leon Cerner taking an early lead. The only difference being that Krebs was on 21 points as a result of getting the 3 bonus points for taking pole position, and Arlo Jones is in 10th rather than 17th due to getting 2 points for the fastest lap of the race, meaning 11 drivers were yet to get off the points scoring mark. In the Teams Championship, though, it was a different story, as Viper Racing took an early lead by 4 points ahead of Virgin Racing, with the 2 American teams were keeping each other company 3rd and 4th, whilst Abt and China Racing are still yet to score points this season.
An exciting first ever race for Formula E. Thank you to El Warrior for providing his voice, and congratulations to Leon Cerner on becoming the first ever winner of the series. Well, that is Formula E out of the way. Now let us go back to Europe and to the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Austria for round 5 of the GP4 DTM Offline Championship. Last time out, Evan Byrne took the honours of taking his first ever DTM win on the same track he took his last top class win back in 2012 in a McLaren. But how will he get on here at the Styrian region, and how will everyone else get on? Well, let's find out, shall we? Our usual DTM narrator, Francesco G, wasn't able to do the narration for this one due to other commitments, so instead to do the DTM narration, here is the Epic Gamer 321 to take us through it.
The race at the Red Bull Ring started with Sean Grant taking his first pole position of the season, followed by Victor Bobo and Leon Campana in 3rd. The rest of the grid consisted of Viggo Holst, Maxim Titko, Joel Hutter, Darius Cabal, Kian Byrne, Andy Higgs, George Roque, Brent Jans, Zachary Fitzwater, Ali Zoga, Javi Perez, Nicholas Robach, Carlos Barton, Robin Keeles, Michael Mocho, Owen Carpenter, Ethan Sermon, Evan Byrne and Rohan Marchen at the back. It was a race in mixed conditions, predicted to start cloudy with a fairly strong chance of light rain early on, but decreased late in the event. Everyone got away well, as Bobo passed Grant around the outside of turn 1 to take the lead. Fitzwater made a move at turn 3 on Campana and took P7 from the American. Bobo's lead was short-lived as Joel Hutter took the lead at turn 7 before the end of the first lap. As lap 2 started, Campana took the position back from Fitzwater, while George Roque dived past Titov into turn 1. The entire pack had close battles as Andy Higgs made a move on Zolga to go up into P11. Sean Grant determined to retake the lead and back up into P2 after passing Bobo, lost even more time as Darius Cabal got past him at turn 1. Bobo's pace was really poor, and by the end of lap 3 he had lost P4 to Viggo Holst. On lap 4, Zachary Fitzwater pulled off into the gravel trap due to a suspension failure and became the first retirement of the race. Owen Carpenter on a heavy fuel load struggled for grip and spun at turn 7. The midfield battle continued as Campana overtook Kean Byrne at the first corner. Meanwhile, someone else spun after the corner. This time it was Andy Higgs. Turn 7 was no foe for George Roper, however, as he made a move on Kean Byrne sticking to that corner. The Irishman was next targeted by Titkoff, who got him down into turn 3. By lap 15, it started to rain. Rope took no prisoners and passed Campana into turn 2. One lap later, many cars started diving into the pits for a change of tyres, with the first of those being Nicholas Zorbach. Race leader Hutter also came into the pits to switch intermediates, as did the rest of the field. On lap 17, temporary leader George Rope pitted too, with a 7.7 second pit stop. He rejoined behind Holst and ahead of Campana. However, the American wasn't happy with that and took P5 off the Brit at turn 7. Further back, Michael Mocho passed Zorbach at turn 4 to move up into P7. Xavi Perez was moving places too as he grabbed P13 at turn 2 to Zolga's detriment. On lap 26, Kean Byrne tried to pass Maxim Titkoff at turn 3, and with a little bit of contact, got the job done. Evovo was also starting to make a comeback, as he took P8 from the Russian at the start of the next lap. Lap 28 and Xavi Perez from P12 made a stunning pass on Evan Byrne and Kearless at the hairpin, as the Frenchman grabbed P10 from them. Holst, Campana and Rope resumed their battle for P4 as Vigo was passed by Leanne at turn 7. However, the Dane didn't give up and reminded us all that he is the 2012 GP4 champion, claiming the place at turn 1. Maxim Titkoff was now under attack from 2 cars at once, and as he tried to defend from Evan Byrne, there was contact and he went off, as Kearless passed both of them. Lap 31 and Leanne Campana overtook Holst at the same spot and lost a place, turn 1. One lap later, Kia Bird joined the battle, and after Rook overtook Holst, he tried to do the same but only ended up hitting him and spinning, losing a lot of positions before hitting the wall. Lap 34 and it was time for dries again. Sean Grant was the first to come in, rejoining in P3. Fellow former OC driver Rook pitted as well. One part of the track was still wet though, turn 7, where Zorbach spun and hit the wall, coming very close to taking out race leader Hutter. As he pitted, he rejoined comfortably in the lead, as Koval pitted too, as did Holst in the Bobo. However, the Dane was forced to wait due to many cars coming in, and lost a place to a Nigerian. One lap later, Perez came into the pits as well, as he tried to overtake Kearless with P6. The two collided at turn 1 and spat. Lap 40 and Perez was down into P16, running to back in Mocho at turn 3, with the Brit being lucky not to spin as well. Turn 7 was still a trouble spot as Evan Byrne found out by spinning 2 laps later, and his compatriot Owen Carpenter made the same mistake. Meanwhile, Maxim Titkoff managed to take P8 from Rowan Mojcin as the Hungarian had a poor exit from turn 1. George Rookman was headed for P4, however a spin at turn 7 caused him to drop the place. It's the battle of the Hungarians as Solga overtook Mojcin into turn 1. Evan Byrne's day went from bad to worse as the aquaplane even spun at turn 2, nearly collecting Perez before hitting the wall. With 4 laps to go, turn 7 found another victim as Higgs went off. With a dominant performance, it was Joe Hutter who took the win, his first of the season and second overall. Pulsar Sean Grant came into P2 ahead of Koval. Just as that was happening, Carlos Barton spun at turn 7 and lost P12. And here are the results, with Hutter taking the comfortable win ahead of Grant and Koval. Campana is 4th, followed by Rugg, Ibowo, Holst and Titkoff, who complete the points places. Fitzwater was the only DNF, the fastest lap also went to Hutter. In the driver's standings, Ethan Searman continues to lead, however his no points finish shades everyone else as Grant takes P2 and closes the championship gap. Campana's level with him, but in P3 followed by Rugg, Evan Byrne, Ibowo, Hasso with his first points of the season, and Zolga.
An amazing DTM race at Austria. Thank you to the Epic Gamer 321 for stepping in for Francesco G this week, and congratulations to Joel Hutter on taking his second career win. And with that brings us to the end of the Feeder Series roundup for another week. Next week we'll just have a look at round 6 of the DTM Championship with Formula E and GP2 not being on. And that race will take place at the famous Silverstone circuit in the United Kingdom, where just like here, the weather could spice things up. But until then, I've been JWF1 and I will see you next week.